Zadrizes Buzdari goes down.
Please follow me on social media, Twitter, _hunts, Instagram, _hunts_reviews. And then here on YouTube, Sir Hunts Reviews. Bring in the thunder.
Zadrizes Buzdari goes down.
Whoa, your boy, it's your boy, Dragon Daddy, Sir Hunts. What's up, everyone? After a short hiatus, I've got some content that I'm still currently working on. I've got a leaked video that I'm going to release here on YouTube soon, right? But this first comment comes from a user named Tommy Foster. And he says, I don't think Maegor was a fire white either. But if he was, he wouldn't have to be killed by fire like the whites in the Army of the Dead. Beric Dondarrion was a fire white, and he was still able to be killed with the blade. Sandor Clegane kills him right in front of Arya with a sword. It's only through the prayer and the kiss of life that Thoros does that again. Otherwise, he'd just be as dead as if he were never brought back in the first place. Like I said, I don't believe Maegor was brought back to life through the use of R'hllor's magic, but that's not to say he couldn't have been magically conceived or magically altered after the Trial of Seven. So that's in comment to my Maegor the Cruel, Maegor was not that cruel stream. And here's the thing. When you're commenting, for instance, this person, on my stream of thought or stream of consciousness, good luck trying to make good points, because I'm not even making good points. It's just like a what-if scenario. And specifically, I think you're talking about how something, when I mentioned it, it was like, what if kind of thing, right? So, like, in those what-if scenarios, when you add in the full context of the story, they always sort of dissipate, which is why I always heavily go, I don't know, or put your tinfoil on, or check this, right? But I personally had never heard anybody even try to conceive a theory of how Maegor was able to be healed, right? Mind you, I don't watch any other YouTubers' videos that make a Song of Ice and Fire content, right? I've watched some in the past before, but I've never seen that theory mentioned anywhere. Not on Reddit, not on Facebook, not on Twitter, anywhere. I was just kind of like, what if, right? But it actually does make sense, because Maegor was brutally wounded, right? Nobody could heal him. He was unconscious for days. It wasn't until his mother, Visenya, sent for his bride at the time. It wasn't really a bride. They hadn't married yet. But once Tyanna the Tower came over with his actual bride, that was when he was able to be healed. So in my opinion, the only type of extreme healing we've ever seen has been from R'hllor. He's the only god that will extremely heal a character, like bring them back from death to life. Like it's been R'hllor. He did it with Beric. He did it with Lady Catelyn. This is going to happen with Jon Snow. So that's kind of where that theory came from. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to that live stream. And I hope you catch this and get my response to it. Now this next comment comes from a user named AUPZ23, and they are a public subscriber. So thank you, OBS23. You rock. They said, I would love for there to be a series on Old Valyria to see what the other Dragonlord families were like before the fall of Old Valyria. Hell yes. Samesies, brother. Now listen, I have always been one of the people who have supported, right, the, what the hell, why would my logo not stay right there? That have always supported the idea of a Rise of Valyria, Fall of Valyria TV series. Mainly because in this day and age, Hollywood people are making up for the decades-long abuse of not casting anybody outside of white folks for roles, even if the character is a different race. It usually went to a fucking white person, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm half white myself, right? But Hollywood has a long history of doing that, so the past 10 years or so, they've been making up for it, sometimes to the point where it seems like it's a little too much, right? But anyway, this show right here, Valyrian show, would sort of fit right into that bracket, because when you have a continent like Essos and its people are so diverse, and really Essos seemingly is older than Westeros, well then it just makes sense. You have a bunch of different races and individuals and stuff that are over there that are of the blood. Now in the Song of Ice and Fire books, technically Valyrians are described as having very pale, milk white like skin, purple eyes, and then blonde precious metal type hair, so gold, silver, right? But that's not the case for in the TV show. And as a matter of fact, there's other people that have dragon blood that don't typically look like Valyrians, right? So what I'm getting at here is I, too, would love to see a show on ancient Valyria. It would... I don't even really know what point I'm trying to make here. I kind of just talked in circles. But yes, I agree. I would love to see what all the different dragon lore writing families look like. I want to know about the Valyrian sorcerer princes, right? So not every single dragon writing family always produced people that rode dragons. Some of those higher up families in Valyria didn't actually have any dragon riders active in the family, so what they would do is you would have a sorcerer prince, right, who would take on multiple wives to try to increase his chances to produce a dragon rider. Those sorcerer princes probably practiced dark arts and magic. In my opinion, those Valyrian mages, those prince mages or whatever, they would use the glass candles to see over long distances and enter people's minds and do all types of magic that is otherwise forbidden outside of Valyria, and forbidden since the fall of Valyria, unless you're in a shy, right? That's just extremely interesting to me. Now, I feel like that could be one of the best shows ever for a fantasy TV series. It's high magic. It's not like the world post-dragons in the main Game of Thrones series. This is like at the height of magic. Gods are everywhere, and the Valyrian Freehold tapped into that. I would love to see something on that show as well. Thank you for leaving that comment. Thank you for being a public subscriber. Alright, and then the next comment comes from a user named Sita, and they said, thank you for watching my video, thank you for leaving a comment. I think the rat eating the blood is 100% Larry's reference, because the result of all the bad things happened in episode 5 begin with Larry's ratting Rhaenyra out to Alicent. Same for episode 4, rats. Larys magically knew about the moon tea, like the rats were watching Rhaenyra and Alicent. Then episode 6, rats is linked to the ending where Larys does his speech in face reveal. A rat, Larys tasting blood for killing his father and brother for power. It's rather obvious in my opinion. It's rather obvious because you watched a video that put all of those things in that order, in that context. Like, you just convinced me through leaving that comment that maybe there's something more to the theory of the rats being linked to Larys, just from the way you listed the sequence of events. I could sit here and tell you that there's a massive conspiracy of them hiding the fact that Daemon has a gigantic penis, right? And here's some events that cut away as soon as they're about to show his dick. He's got such a massive penis. When he's plowing Mysaria from behind, she has to give up, stop halfway through the scene, and they made it pretend and look as though Daemon couldn't get hard all the way. You see what I'm doing? That's kind of what you just did with the rats there. Mind you, Larys is of House Harrenhal. House Harrenhal proudly boasts of their strong firstman blood. Anybody who has firstman blood that has a prominent role in the story, not anybody, but most of the people, have some sort of magical ability. For instance, you have Bloodraven, okay? Bloodraven, although he's a Targaryen, and he's got the milky white pale hair, the purple eyes, the bone white skin, and all those features, he's also half Northman. And because he's half Northman, half blood of the firstman, he's a warg. He's able to warg, right? And he's known as 1,000 Eyes in One. When he goes north of the wall, he becomes Lord Commander, then ventures north of the wall, becomes the Three-Eyed Raven in the cave. And most of that, if not all of that, is because of his northern blood and Targaryen blood. So he's able to do some mystical things, right? Targaryens, obviously, they're blood of the dragon, right? So when you look at House Harrenhal being one of the only houses south of the Neck. Now, the Neck is this area of the map in which it's literally a domain marker for the Northern Kingdom. So if there's a house that's below the northern domains that's boasting of their firstborn blood, that's something to take into consideration. But here's the thing. In canon, in all these Song of Ice and Fire books, in Fire and Blood and World of Ice and Fire, I'm assuming when Fire and Blood Part 2 comes out, in the Dunk and Egg stories, right? Night of the Seven Kingdoms, in A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Feast for... Oh, I messed it up. That's the first time I've ever messed it up. A Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, A Dance of Dragons, eventually Winds of Winter, A Dream of Spring. All of those books I have studied, right? Multiple times. I should have a degree in them, in my opinion. There's no context of the Strongs having a mystical connection, right? Outside of this little old character known as Alice Rivers. Like... The thing that's mysterious about Larys is that he's the master of whispers. He's kind of a carbon copy of Varys, right? But it's just weird how he wants his foot cut off when he knows he's defeated in ultimately when Cregan Stark kills him with ice. He wants his foot removed. So for the TV show, they turned that into a foot fetish. There's nothing with rats. There's examples of wargs being able to warg into other animals outside of dogs, wolves, and ravens, and crows, and potentially a dragon and actual humans, but none of them have ever really warged a rat. It's possible. It's very well possible. When warging is explained to Breanne, it's said that... Like, so, for instance, in A Dance with Dragons, when Breanne is in the cave first learning how to warg crows, right? He enters the mind of one crow, and Bloodraven goes, yeah. Like, after Breanne does it, he flies straight into the wall and kills the crow, and then he ends up back in his body, right? He doesn't kill the crow, he just runs in the wall. It would have been funnier if the crow actually died, but it didn't, right? So, after Breanne hopped into its mind and flew around a bit, he crashed into the wall and then ended up back in his body, right? And the Bloodraven tells him that the children of the forest used to warg these ravens as well, right? And that sometimes a piece of them is still inside the mind of the raven. So alongside that information, Breanne is also told that animals like dogs and wolves are kind of easier to warg because once you warg them once, it's like a glove, it sort of fits, but also they're man's best friend, right? So their minds are similar to humans, and that connection and bond that they naturally have makes it easier for a warg to enter their mind. So, you know, you got this dude, Varamir Sixskins. He can warg a bear, a couple of shadow cats, a falcon, and well, no, he doesn't actually warg a falcon. No, Varamir Sixskins does warg a falcon, because when Melisandre lights him on fire with some sort of a weird magic trick that she does, Varamir thinks back in his prologue. He thinks back to... this isn't his prologue in A Dance of Dragons. He thinks back to how he was, like, burned immediately. He had never felt a fire so hot as that when Melisandre hit him with the fire blast from her staff. Because he was basically warging all these different animals, and one of them was the bird to keep a lookout. When Melisandre and Stannis show up, Melisandre immediately burns. I'm trying to think. I mean, yes, it's possible. It's possible. When you list the evidence, like I just said, when you list it like that, you know, you kind of make a good point. I will say that I'll have to revisit this theory. I think the theory is from a YouTuber, Joe Wizard. And I know from firsthand experience, when you're making a YouTube video, one of the whole points of making the video, the goal of it, is to convince people of your point. So he probably did an amazing job of lining the context up. I've never seen his video. I just heard the theory online because when season 1 was out, I guess he had put that video out on YouTube, and then some online magazines started trying to talk shit about it, and that's when I seen it. It popped up on my radar. I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I clicked on it and seen, like, oh yeah, the person who wrote the article doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, and this dude actually made some good points. I just don't necessarily agree with the theory. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna leave this open for the air. I made my points. You all let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section. You think it's possible? Alright, so this next one comes from a username Aaron Holston. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you for leaving a comment, my dude. He says, please stop referring to this meal with George R. R. Martin as proof of R plus L equals J. It was most likely a question that allowed him to gauge how deep they had looked into his story. George clearly doesn't tell him anything, otherwise we would have a better season 5 to 8 to watch. And what clues are you speaking of that push R? Oh my god, are you serious? R plus L equals J. I need something a little bit stronger for this question. Oh, damn. There we go. And what clues are you using to push the R plus L equals J? Do they explain Ned not thinking about Rhaegar for years? Okay, so let me address that, because I've actually seen that that on a goddamn social media post recently. I don't know if you're the same person who made that post on social media, but look, let me tell you something. If you think... Oh, let me read the last part again. Do they explain Ned not thinking about Rhaegar for years? These clues, right, are not so much clues. All right, so let me reiterate. All right, let me start over. If I don't know how to say this without sounding extremely insulting. If you read Game of Thrones and walked away from that book, let's pretend the show doesn't even exist. If you just read Game of Thrones by itself, and you don't immediately figure out what in the is going on with Jon Snow's parentage, then I wonder if the book didn't go over your head and perhaps a reread is in order. Okay, there are certain things that George writes in his books that are meant to have more stuff looked at. Like, you're not supposed to just take it surface level. Let me give you a prime example of that, right? When Jaime Lannister is called the Kingslayer, and then it's later explained what the Mad King was going to do, that sets up the story for later on when Tyrion is having, the Alchemist Guild kind of does it themselves, but when they're making the wildfire, the idea is hinted at because a large cache of wildfire is found underneath I think it was in the dragon pit. They were taking stones from the dragon pit, and one of the masons took a wall down or something, and they found this room that had all of this wine in it, but it was also casks of wildfire. I think the dude tried to drink it or something like that, and he died or whatever. But the idea is that we're meant to look more into that, right? Because George is giving us different examples of how the Mad King did these terrible things and their effects on King's Landing. And we're meant to look more into that because George tells us as the story unfolds more and more information. With Jon Snow, it's the same thing, but also he makes it pretty clear that it's most likely Rhaegar and Lyanna. There's some other choices, but it's Rhaegar and Lyanna. Let me give you a prime example. When, you said, Ned hasn't thought about Rhaegar in years. Why would Ned think about the person that dishonored his sister? Right? Ned is a straightforward, seemingly long-term thinking dude, right? He's always talking about winter, how it's coming, how he has to prepare for it, how his place is up north in Winterfell, how he's trying to keep his family safe, how he never should have went down south and all this stuff. If we're told and we read his POV, that's the type of dude he is. Why would he think, right, about the person who dishonored his sister, okay, outside of the context of Robert Baratheon coming to visit Winterfell. He probably pushed all of that shit down. Robert's rebellion, the death of Lyanna, the death of Rhaegar, which is tied into that directly, that's all pushed down. Now, he might remember fondly of his sister, thinking like, oh, when he's walking around Winterfell, he's like, oh, remember that one time when we were kids and we were chasing each other around this specific location or something? Yeah, I'm sure he has those memories all the time, but the other painful ones that are tied into that, like the memories of Rhaegar, Lyanna's death, Robert's rebellion, Robert's actual reaction to if, he found out that Lyanna had a child with Rhaegar, right? He would be dead. Jon would be killed. So Ned is forced to promise Lyanna not to tell Robert that Jon Snow is her and Rhaegar's son. That's so clear, in my opinion. I don't understand how anybody could take it any other way other than overly reading into it, right? It's kind of similar to the rat theory. The rat theory, when you put all of those clues in order like that, it's very convincing because the rats are seemingly always associated with Larys and how he, potentially is warging the rats. Like, it's possible. What's interesting is that Varys, right, his predecessor, or I guess his successor, 150 years down the line, has these little birds, right? These little birds are actual orphan children that are able to get into locations inside the Red Keep and listen and eavesdrop into conversations of the higher-ups. Like, those little birds literally murder Kevin Lannister. So, if the initial position was actually someone with extracurricular, activities, with extracurricular abilities, like a warg, per se, that would be interesting. I haven't seen enough to convince me of that theory. I'm sorry. What I do think is interesting, and this was something that I speculated on, is like how Larys was able to kill his family and not really give a shit, is that, well, he's got a ham-fisted foot, He's got a leg that's severely messed up. And I was thinking, like, if instead of him being born that way, what if his brother Harwin crippled him in some sort of rage accident? And not accident, but literally just crippled his brother, right? They grew up, and Larys is getting revenge when he willingly hires his men to go and kill his father and brother, right? But then, that's very similar to Clegane and Sandor, and there's really no evidence of that, because when the two of them are associating with each other on the TV show, so when they're like just sort of talking and stuff, we don't really see any hatred or anything. Remember, they talk about Alicent's green dress and what it means when the High Towers strike a green banner. Like, when they have green flames coming from the High Tower, it means they're ready, preparing for war. They're ready for war. So, once again, I'll leave this up to you all. Let me know what you think down below watching this. Do you think Larys is warging those rats? Alright, and then the next comment is from a user named USCSSJoe2001. He says, I want the first episode, and this is for House of the Dragon, I want the first episode of Season 2, is referring to Season 2, to be the Greens and the Blacks having to deal with the grief of a family member and the fear of an oncoming war. It's not oncoming, the war is here, baby. That's my little edit. Otto is going to be livid at Aemon, being that he was... Otto is going to be livid at Aemon, being that he was... the most deceitful. He wanted to keep the peace as best he could. Wait, what? Otto is going to be livid at Aemon. I agree. Being that he was the most deceitful, he wanted to keep the peace as best he could. So Otto, even though he was being conniving and stuff, he did, but also to, sort of counterpoint to your point there is, like, if you want to keep the peace as best as possible, do not take the throne from the person everyone knew the king named his heir. Your daughter wakes up one day after the king dies and suddenly goes, Viserys had a change of heart. He wanted Aegon to sit the throne, not Rhaenyra. Like, if you're Soraro and you want to keep the peace, you say, well, no, that's not going to happen. No, Alicent, calm down, sit down, shut the fuck up, right? If he really wanted that, let's try to get them married. He could have did so many more different things to keep the peace. I don't necessarily agree with that statement in that he was trying to keep the beast as best he could. If he wanted to keep the peace as best he could, all he had to do was not let Alicent do what she was going to do. Like, yeah, you could say that Alicent being queen, what would Sir Otto, what would he been able to do to stop, her? Well, for one, he commands all of Hightower's forces in King's Landing. He could have, when getting to Aegon, told him that what his mother is trying to do, like, even though Alicent got to him first, he should have known, right? He would have been on top of it if he was actually actively trying to keep the peace. I think he wants to see his house in power. He wanted to see someone with his blood sit in the Iron Throne, and that's his goal. I think if you want to give the ultimate peacekeeper title to anyone in this entire story, King Viserys the First. King Viserys is, for sure, was keeping the peace. He should have ultimately sent Alicent from court and allowed Rhaenyra and her sons to be in court because they are the heirs, and there were so many heirs ahead of his other children with Alicent, but he didn't, and so, this is what happened. I 100% disagree with the statement that Otto was ever a peacekeeper, because he's always sort of been trying to go against the grain and put his best interests in front of the interests of House Targaryen. Meaning, like, his daughter was propositioned, right, to, marry the king, right? And when that happened, he gained more and more power. And then eventually, remember, he's sent away from court for basically trying to get too much power. Like, literally. So I would never consider Otto Hightower a peacekeeper. People like Sir Corlys Velaryon, because of their actions in this story, yes, even though he switches sides and goes to the Greens, it's after he's ultimately forced to. People like him and even Daemon, I would label as peacekeepers before giving Sir Otto, in the TV show at least, that title of, like, guy who wants to keep the peace, These last couple comments are just fun ones. Basically, people give me compliments, and I love compliments. I think everybody loves compliments. This first one's from Mike Andrino Paulus. I know you're Greek, I can tell. Adreno Paulos. Mike Adreno Paulus. Awesome news. Thanks for your videos, man. Valor Morghulis. Valor Morghulis to you as well, Mike. Another comment from Mike. Thank you, man. Love the passion and the enthusiasm. All hail King in the North. Hell yes. Then we got one from Kieran Chale, and they said, I'm honestly so excited for this series. It's one of my favorite books alongside The Ice Dragon. Hell yeah, these are all from comments on Dunkin' Egg. Like, it's not like Dunkin' Egg is being green, just being greenlit or whatever. No, we're getting for sure a first season of the show. So this is like when House of the Dragon news was announced. The next thing in the next couple of months, for sure by the end of this year, we're going to have Dunkin' Egg casted. Like, in my opinion, Dunk should be the first one casted, and then obviously Aegon too. But, like, remember, Viserys, Paddy Considine was the first one announced, and that was just a few months after they told us we were getting the first season of House of the Dragon. So this is really exciting, super exciting. Can't wait. John Delg, well, this is kind of a negative one, but John Delgan says, no brainer, that event occurs sometime within the first 2 episodes. He's talking about blood and cheese. Yes, I agree. No brainer. And then the last comment of this video is from, Stormborn Wolf, cracking up. And that was from a short that I did based on Euron books from the show. Now, I do a lot of shorts. I do a lot of different things that I think are funny that I put out on my social media, whether that be skits, reels on Instagram, reels on Facebook. Just go follow me, please. Oh, crap, that's the wrong thing. Just please go follow me. Twitter, Sir_Hunts. Instagram, Sir_Hunts_reviews, and then on YouTube, right? If you're a fan of my content. If you aren't, then you don't got to do jack shit. Just, I will say this, though. If you aren't a fan of my stuff, and you don't want to subscribe, and you don't want to like my videos or whatever, what makes you watch me? I'm curious. Let me know down below in the comment section. I've mentioned this before in my more recent videos, but something like 65% of the people that watch my content here on YouTube are not subscribed. And I'm just curious as to what or why that is. I know for me, when I watch YouTubers, I watch them for sometimes years before I subscribe. And the main reason being is because I want to make sure they're who I, want to subscribe to. My subscription isn't anything special, right? But I just want to make sure that I'm a big fan of that person before I subscribe. So, for instance, before I subscribed to Scotty Kilner, this dude that makes car videos here on YouTube, I watched him since 2017. I thought he was annoying. I thought he was on meth. I thought he was this. I thought he was that. But then eventually I was like, why am I still watching this person? And then I realized, it's because I like them. Let me go ahead and subscribe. So that's what I did. So if that's what you're doing with me, let me know what I need to do to get your ass to click the button. But if you're already subscribed and you've already liked, thank you. Alonat. Super special shout out to Breanne Johnson, the Northwestern member, and Destiny Mix Queen Phillips 420, a bunch of other usernames that she's always changing it to. I'm just kidding, Destiny. But yeah, thank you to Destiny, Breanne Johnson, and the Northwestern member. And Tyler Schnabel. They're all members of, they're executive producers of this video, but they're all members of my Patreon. Over on patreon.com/HunterReviews, they're on this tier called Dragonite. If you join that tier, you get to pick video topics. You get, direct shout outs in every video, and also it just really helps support me because YouTube's ad revenue is infrequent at best, unreliable, and all this stuff. And I'm kind of full-time here on YouTube, but if you don't want to do that, or if you can't do that, watching me here is the best thing you can do. So thank you. Alongat and Zeldrizas Pustare Exos Dao.